Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of Hilaal Live. Thanks for watching us on channel 347, also on our live stream and our app store as well. It's Mental Health Monday, and back in studio we invite clinical psychologist Brother Rafiq. Lockhat. Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah so much for coming back into studio. Such a great topic that we've been covering over the last couple of weeks, mental health. We had a special guest in last week. But this week we're covering another topic that's been trending, that's very often people find themselves with a massive challenge on how to get out of a depressive state. So depression is a topic today, and we're going to open up the WhatsApp line as well for you to correspond with us. But in terms of the legal or clinical term depression, what exactly does that refer to?
Right. What I first want to cover today is how people use the term incorrectly all the time.
Okay.
So depression is a serious mental illness, but you hear people use the term all the time.
True.
I'm depressed. Oh, I'm just depressed. I'm depressed all the time. So what happens is we devalue the term.
Right.
So all of us have bad days.
Yeah.
I have bad day, you have bad day. We have a bad couple of days. You know, we under stress, we have something at work. Right, but then people start using the term I'm depressed. And so what happens is generally the public then start to think, oh, it's nothing. Because in a couple of days you're okay again.
Right.
And then so it's kind of like if you've got a cold and you keep saying I've got pneumonia, I've got pneumonia, I've got pneumonia. It's not pneumonia, you've got a slight cold.
Right.
So after a while people don't take your cold seriously anymore. They start to ignore when you say, oh, I've got pneumonia. They don't take you serious anymore. So, this guy's making a big thing. So what I want to appeal to our viewers is firstly it's not hard, but to just start using the terms correctly so that we can start recognizing it. Okay, so it's back to what I was saying. Depression is a serious mental condition.
Right.
And I'd like our viewers to start saying, I'd rather say I'm having a bad day.
Okay.
Or rather say I'm sad today. Or rather say today I'm really frustrated. Or today I'm like really angry about X, Y, or Z. Okay, rather than use the term I'm depressed.
Right.
Because in 2 days, when you're no longer frustrated and angry, then it looks like your depression was nothing. It just came and it vanished. So we devalue the term and we make the public believe that it's nothing.
Okay.
Right, so it isn't. So depression is a serious mental condition. Usually the major symptoms would be for about a period of 2 weeks consistently. So not a bad day, not a bad 1 or 2 days, but say consistently the same kind of symptoms for over 2 weeks. That's when, like, you know that you're not snapping out of it.
Okay. So when we look at and you refer to the symptoms of being depressed, and for a, fortnight maybe, what symptoms should we be looking out for?
Right. So firstly, depressed mood. Okay, just feeling really low, feeling tearful consistently, having sleep disturbance, either too little or too much.
Right.
I don't feel like getting out of bed. I just want to sleep all the time versus I can't sleep. I'm trying to sleep. I stay awake all night. So you could get either of those.
Okay.
Then appetite disturbance, the most common one. So either you could be overeating or you could be undereating.
Okay.
So people who are depressed, and not only those that eat a lot, people often associate I eat a lot when I'm miserable.
Right.
We'll talk about that some other time. Comfort eating, that is true, but you could also lose your appetite as well. So either of those extreme ends. Then you start sliding into feeling worthless.
Okay.
So now we're going into the more serious bit. So there's a mood disturbance, right? There's a sleep disturbance, the appetite disturbance, now the psychological bit. Now we're moving into starting to feel worthless. I don't feel like I'm worth anything. I don't know what I'm doing here. Right. Now from there you start sliding into what we call helplessness.
Okay.
So now you're in a state where you just feel helpless about your life. And then you slide then further down into hopelessness. Now that's dangerous, because once you get from the worthless, helpless, hopelessness, then that's when suicidal Now you get two kinds. You get suicidal ideation, meaning you have a thought. It's not even mean you're going to do it.
Yeah.
I just wish that I don't wake up today.
Right.
I just wish that I wake up dead, or I don't feel like living anymore. I don't see what's the point of my life anymore. Now those are thoughts. Then you get intent.
Right.
Intent means you start making a plan. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm very serious about this now. And it's not that you publicly share it,
right, yeah,
but you start thinking. At that point, people have kind of crossed the line. They've lost the fear, because now they're making a plan. But that's usually connected to when we get to that worthless, helpless, hopeless. But when we get to there, it's not a far leap into suicidal thoughts, and then a little slip further into suicidal intention.
Right. So medically, there are various symptoms that are recognized as types of depression.
Yes.
Would you mind going through those for
Sure.
us?
Okay. So there's a big book called Diagnostic Statistic Male Mental Disorders. It's quite a thick book, and almost all universities use that. It started out this small.
Right.
And over the last 40 or 50 years, it got bigger and bigger. I suppose as we get smarter and as we learn new things and then we add new things in. So currently the recognized ones are the most common one called major depressive disorder. Okay, characterized again by all of those symptoms, but particularly low mood. That's called major depressive disorder or just major depression.
Right.
Then you get one that people don't realize, and it used to be called dysthymic disorder, DYS, dysthymic. I always get confused about dysthymic disorder.
Right.
Now it's called persistent depressive disorder.
Okay.
So that's where you have almost depressed mood for almost 2 years.
Sure.
But what happens is that you get accustomed to it.
So you just go on with
so
life
you start
and
to
coping.
think this is normal. So basically, if this is your function, right, you start to function at about here. So if you're a 6-cylinder car, you're running on 3 cylinders, but it feels normal.
Right, right. It's a coping mechanism that you've adapted to.
It just feels normal. It's not, obviously, and so everything is a lot harder, and you don't realize that you are functioning in this depressed state for so long. It's kind of like going on a hike with a 50-kilo backpack, and not realizing everybody else has got 5 kilos, and you're wondering why things are so hard for you. Everybody else seems to be going along. Okay, so that's persistent. That's a new term, persistent depressive disorder. The old term in eye training is called dysthymic disorder.
Okay.
Okay, so that's like the second major one. Then the third one is, we don't get it that much in South Africa, called seasonal affective disorder.
Okay.
Meaning we get affected because there's no sun.
Right.
So not having sunlight affects our mood. So this is very common in the Northern Hemisphere.
Correct.
Although this week I saw several patients who were feeling very lethargic. Oh, that's the other symptom I forgot to mention, just general fatigue.
Okay.
General tiredness added to all the other symptoms.
In Cape Town especially, we've had a severe winter,
right,
where people were kept indoors to a large amount of hours in the day.
So I've had several patients this week who've said to me, I said, just go to your doctor and have your bloods tested. And they've come back and they've all said to me that they've got vitamin D deficiency.
Sure.
Now that's not surprising.
Right.
Okay, so then the doctors will then prescribe the right amount of vitamin D. So seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, oddly enough, is a real thing. It exists. Sure. It's less in South Africa, becoming more, but overseas very common.
Right. Countries that experience very little daylight.
Very little daylight.
Like 17 hours of darkness sometimes in the day.
I mean, you know how miserable all of us got here in Cape Town?
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, this is what we had, like 7 days of persistent rain, wind, no sunlight. And people are really saying they've got vitamin D deficiency.
Sure. That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Wow. Okay. So we've been through about 4 of them.
Yeah. There's more to come. Right. Then there is the famous one, manic depression, right, that you see in the movies a lot. That's characterized by extreme highs and extreme lows.
Okay. I'm going to stop you right there. We're going to continue with that just after the break, because I'd like you to give as much information as possible without breaking your words. We have in studio clinical psychologist, Brother Rafiq Lockhat. who is sharing valuable information around today's topic, which is depression. You're welcome to join us on the WhatsApp line and send through any questions, queries, concerns that you may have regarding this very serious topic. Stay tuned. We'll be back after the break. Thanks for watching us on Hilaal Live. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Our topic tonight we're discussing with clinical psychologist Rafiq Lockhat is depression. And we want to unpack some of the challenges around the topic of depression. And Rafiq is doing very well to explain some negatives that gets attached with the word depression. Brother Rafiq, Jazakallah so much once again for coming into studio and unpacking this. So before the break, we said there are 7 medically recognized types of depression. You went through about 4 of them. Before we go on with the others, can you just want to unpack those for us a little bit, the ones that we covered already?
I just want to say firstly that shows like this is really important. Last week we had Devon.
Correct.
And talking about destigmatizing mental illness. And so I think what our aim here is to keep it simple and to make it, because these things all seem very mysterious and complicated. And so I think people get like afraid of it. And I think the show like this is really helpful in making it simple for people to understand. So I'm trying to leave out all the big words.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And it's also such a taboo topic to a large extent that people don't want to be categorized when they are diagnosed with a mental health challenge. I would imagine that you experience that all the time.
Well, in our very first show, we spoke about how people just think that it's something that you can snap out of.
Right.
That it's a sign of weakness.
Correct.
So weakness of faith, a weakness of character, weakness of something. It's not.
Of course.
It's not. And hopefully a show like this is helping people to realize that it's not, that it's serious. And
and we welcome your feedback on our WhatsApp line 079-085-2511. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll pose that through with Brother Rafiq. So the 7 medically diagnosed types of depression.
Right. So the first one was what you said, MDE, major depressive disorder, most common, the one we see a lot. And the second one is a seasonal affective disorder, SAD. We don't see it that often in South Africa, but like I said recently, I'm seeing more and more patients who are saying, I'm not coping with not seeing the sun. I'm feeling terrible. So if it continues like this, we're going to see more of that.
Of course,
Then the third one I spoke about is the manic depression one we spoke about. So that's the one the movies make a big thing of.
Right, yes.
So characterized by extreme highs. Now, when I say a high, in the high, you do all kinds of things that you wouldn't normally do.
Okay.
So, for example, you start going on wild shopping sprees. Now, I don't mean like how some of us do it, but really you go beyond. You'll buy 20 TV, or you'll buy 50 pairs of shoes, and you won't need them. But you stack them up at home. That's one of the things. Like, you have lots of energy. You can't sleep. People have been known to be vacuuming the house at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
If you work for a company, they love you in a manic state because you get tons of work done. It shouldn't, but people find themselves working excessive with amazing energy. And the thing about being in a manic state is people like it. They like being in that stage because they have all this energy. But there's a downside, obviously, is all the shopping. And I've sometimes had to write letters on behalf of patients who were referred to me because they went on wild shopping sprees. They can't afford the stuff.
Of course, yeah.
And we write letters to say, look, the person was in a manic state. They'll return all the stuff. Can you please understand what happened? It wasn't deliberate.
Yeah.
They weren't feeling well. Okay, so while you're in that manic state, you can do incredible things. You work for long hours. You don't need any sleep. There is the other side to it, is that you become hypersexual, unfortunately. Like you just start having sex with everybody and everyone. You don't realize it.
Right.
But in that, so it is a serious mental illness. There are serious consequences for people sometimes in a manic state. Then from there you dip. And you go into a very serious low. So that's the manic depressive
And then
part.
your body goes through all those changes at the same time.
All those changes too.
Physiological changes.
And it's very, when we talk about next week, we'll talk about therapy. It's very hard to do psychotherapy with the manic patient because their ideas are rushing, their thoughts are rushing. They become very creative if they're artists and musicians in that phase. So hence they don't really want to be treated
Get out of that
for
state.
it. But when they need it is when they dip. And then that's when the crash comes.
Okay.
And then people become severely depressed. And they become suicidal in that stage, or they just lay on the bed. They can't do much. So
Right.
that's the manic
Very
depression.
similar to what Devin spoke to us about last week as well. He found himself sleeping for large amount of hours.
Right.
Couldn't explain what he was going through.
But he wasn't in a manic depressive
Right,
state.
right, right.
He's differently.
Yeah.
Then what else you get? Then they get a very controversial one that's come up recently. It's called
What about depression?
to do the period. What? I
Okay,
can't
we'll
think
get it.
straight.
So-
Persistent dysphoric. I'm gone blank now. But it's to do with now they've been recognized, and again it's controversial because not everybody agrees with it.
Okay.
But during a period, like a week before a period, it's been found that some women become very depressed.
Right.
They become very irritable. Their mood. Now, this is not normal stuff.
And this is before they menstrual or prior to the menstrual?
A week or two before.
Sure.
Okay, they become depressed. They become very irritable. And then there's other things like bloating, soreness of the breasts. There's
Right.
fatigue, joint pains, muscle pains. So they've recently been looking at that and saying, but this is a very serious condition, that it's
Sure.
not just like a normal period. There are many reasons for it,
Yeah.
but it's been recognized now. Not everybody agrees with it.
Okay. Okay.
Because they say you're labeling
Yeah.
a pretty normal thing, but what they're saying is when it's an extreme end of it.
Right. But all of the symptoms that you've just mentioned are treatable, number one.
Yes.
Is it treatable with therapy? Or in some cases, does the patient need medication to handle it?
Right. So I want to save treatment for like a whole show.
Okay.
Because treatment is a very complex issue. There are many different things that we have to look at firstly. For example, you can't immediately diagnose somebody depressed unless they've had certain blood tests, unless they've been checked for certain things. Because often there are physical illnesses that mimic depression.
Okay.
And then you're treating them for depression when they actually don't have a clinical depression. It gets interesting and complex when you have certain physical conditions that are easily misdiagnosed.
I got you. Before I go on, have we covered all 7?
I don't know, can't remember.
Okay, we'll get back to that. But one of the things I'd like to touch on is that through all of this, that the patient, and we call patient because they would come to you for help, where does the family and support structure fit into all of this?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Because this surely has such a massive ripple effect around those that may not understand what is going on with the patient.
So that's a really great question, and that's a whole topic on its own, because depending what we call the index patient, so if it's, let's say it's the mum.
Right.
You can see how the family structure is going to take strain now, right? Because the kids don't understand what's happening. They just think like mother's being like difficult. Why are you always shouting at us?
Yeah.
You're always irritable. You're always crying. What's going on? I didn't mention excessive tearfulness when you.
Right.
So tearfulness, excessive tearfulness, when you have a depressive disorder, is very common, and nobody understands what's going on. In fact, the person themselves don't understand.
Right.
So it's often very difficult for them to explain to family members what they're experiencing when they're unsure themselves. And then if you add this category of period depression, to call it simply, it's even more complicated. If it's a father who happens to be the breadwinner, he's not at work, okay, that affects the family structure.
Of course.
And if it's a child or a teenager,
yeah,
and it's exam time, let's just say, or whatever other reason, parents are unsure.
Right.
And it's very easy to label the child difficult.
Of course.
Not that we don't get difficult children, we do. But it's like you don't want to label the child with the clinical depression as you being difficult, because the treatment's going to be 2 claps or punishments or something like that, which can't really fix the problem.
Gotcha.
Because the young person themselves are unsure what's going on. They don't know why they're crying. They don't know why they're cutting.
Right.
They're unsure what's going on with them also, just like an adult's always unsure.
Of course.
So it really does affect an entire family structure. People think one person won't affect. Every person does. One person with a depressive disorder. Imagine in a manic state, one person in a family who's in a manic state. It affects everybody else.
Definitely.
It affects the family's finances, if they're shopping excessively. It affects the entire family, if they're laying in a bed, don't want to get out of bed. So we will talk about family support, how to help families, what you can do to help a family, how you can get a family to understand, and how not just immediately label the person as mad.
And in the same context, besides family, just the work environment as well. Surely there has to be some type of awareness that needs to be created around what the person is going through, because if they're, especially if they're the breadwinner, that's going to affect so many things.
I think companies are sharper these days.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
They have smart HR. They are like increasingly well trained. They have what they call EAP programs, employee assistant programs. So there's been a recent very positive mood, because people have recognized that if you're depressed, it affects productivity.
Of course.
It affects productivity, it affects the bottom line, the profit.
100%.
So they are investing now in health programs.
Well, that's our time for today.
No, we're done.
Absolutely. We're back next week, inshallah. We'll unpack a lot more. Jazakallah so much for coming into the studio, sharing such valuable information. And we welcome, our audience's comments and questions, and we'll cover that next week, inshallah. Jazakallah. There we go. Brother Rafiq Lockhat in studio, chatting to us. It's Mental Health Monday. We're back next Monday, inshallah, with another episode. From all of us in Cape Town, Sohail Barnes, Mohammed Parker, and myself, Luqmaan Shadrach. Have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.